Hey guys, it's me Gabby from Probocolic, and today I will be reviewing the first and second volume of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. So I had to read these two books for school, and I wasn't sure if I would review them or even mention them on my channel, but I feel as though they are really captivating books, or it is. I'm not sure how to refer to this because it's technically one book, but it's two volumes. So never mind. Today's video will be spoiler free. I will tell you a little bit about the premise and the plot, and I'll tell you about the characters, about the writing style. The premise of this book is that we follow our main protagonist, Edmond Dante, from the age of 19 to when he is about 50 years of age. His story is quite interesting, and I definitely think that the whole story, the whole premise of this book has been used in many other books later on in movies and so on and so forth. So basically, in the beginning, he's, as I said, 19, and he's a sailor in this French company. He is the second in command on the ship of the Pharaoh, and as he's sailing back to France, the captain dies. He gives him a letter to give to one of Napoleon's, let's say, secretaries or like friends on the island of Elba. And before I tell you what happens later on, I just have to mention that at this time, at this point in history, Napoleon has been exiled from France. We have a new king who is Louis XVIII, and there is a huge problem or a huge conflict between the royalists who are supporting Louis XVI and the Bonapartists who are supporting their old king Napoleon. And people who are thought to be helping Napoleon are sent to prison. So our main character, Edmond, is given this letter to give to a person there. It's not Napoleon, just one of his, I guess, secretaries or friends, and he goes there because that's the captain's last wish. He gives the letter, and as he's there, he meets Napoleon. Then Napoleon's friend gives Edmond a letter to carry on to a random person in Paris, in France. Edmond doesn't think much about it. He takes the letter with himself, and he goes back to France, as I said, to marry Mercedes. From there, we follow Mercedes and Edmond being very much in love and wanting to get married as soon as possible. There are, of course, people who wish Edmond the worst of luck in the world, and in the beginning, there are two main villains in the story. And one of them is the accountant of the ship, who is very jealous and who is very pessimistic about everything. And the second one is Mercedes' cousin, who wants to marry her. And that's why I said that the Catalan customs are a bit different, because they don't believe they should marry outside of their ethnic group. So he wants to marry her, and well, she doesn't. She's in love with Edmond, so that's kind of an issue. Together they form a plot. I will not say exactly what happens, but as a consequence, Edmond is arrested for being a Bonapartist, meaning that he supports Napoleon. He goes to one of the lawyers, and Edmond says, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm innocent." And as things are starting to look up, as the person starts to believe Edmond, he actually reads the letter that was given to Edmond on the island of Elba, and then he changes his mind. This is the basic premise of the story. Edmond, who is completely innocent, is sent to a prison in the Shadow of Eve, which is a prison on an island. And yeah, he stays there for 14 years. And you have to read the book to know more. But basically, this book is about this completely innocent person being sent to prison just because other people feel like they have the authority to completely shatter someone else's life. Of course, after many adventures and many failed attempts, our main protagonist goes back to have his revenge on the people who harmed him. And it's really interesting because he doesn't do it right away. He takes like 10 years to think out a specific plan, and he becomes quite ruthless with the people who have harmed him, but also he's very generous with the people who helped him, because there are such people. The Morel family, for example, who are the head of the trading company he worked in, they tried to get him out of prison. They did everything to make sure Edmund comes home, but that didn't really work out. So I guess he is a very interesting character that I could talk about probably for hours, because he starts off with being this kind of a child, because he doesn't believe that he could be harmed when he hasn't done anything wrong, and then in the end he is this man of principles, and maybe I don't support all of his principles, but he definitely has them. So this is about the premise. I believe I haven't spoiled anything. I think that this part is kind of well known to everyone who has heard of Count of Monte Cristo. So about the writing style, I felt as though this book was huge, but the only reason that you don't get bored is because the majority of the text is actually dialogue, and that helps the action move forward so much faster. At some point I just felt kind of confused, because almost the first whole volume is told from Edmund's point of view, and then at some point I started to read from France's point of view, who is another character, and I felt so confused because I had no idea what's going on, but later on it becomes kind of clearer. So about the characters, I feel as though they were really intriguing, because none of them were completely good or completely bad. Even, well, maybe there is one person who is completely bad, but for the rest of them, they all have some good qualities. For example, Fernand, who is Mercedes' cousin and who wants to be with her, he might do horrible things or might have done horrible things to Edmund, but also he's very loyal to his family, and also he thinks that his pride is very important. And even the good characters such as Mercedes have some flaws in their characters, because she, for example, moves on and doesn't believe that Edmund has survived in the island or in the prison. So I felt as though this really portrays society and how there is this gray area that 99.999% of the people are. So as I said, there are a lot of historical references in this book, not only with Napoleon, but also we learn about the state of Europe. We have a lot of references to the Bible. We have a reference to Macbeth by Shakespeare, and I just thought that just reading this book, this huge book, made me kind of know much more about the time period that it was written than if I read a whole entire textbook on it. So yeah, in conclusion, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.25 out of 5 stars. I know that it's quite a heavy load, but I swear that if you start it, it's a very fast-paced read, and maybe if you don't have to read it for school, you don't have a deadline, you'll probably read it in a week, maybe 2, and it will be a very enjoyable experience. I definitely recommend this series because it has a very interesting premise, and even though right now it doesn't seem like it's the most original one, because we've read many books that have a similar plot, this is the original plot of all of the stories that we have read in our time. So yeah, I definitely recommend it, and I definitely enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed reading about Edmond Dantes, about all of his secret identities, and about his revenge and adventures.